and welcome to another video here on my channel, Morbid History, where we discuss historic true crime, folklore, mythology, and just the darker aspects of history. And today we're going into 10 creepy, strange, and scary creatures from Swedish folklore. Let's get straight on into it. So, number 1 on our list is Glon. Glon, also called Hellsow, was always a female and basically a giant evil pig that lived out in the Swedish forests. Started out, I'm guessing, as a cautionary tale for children not to go into the woods at night. Glon had fiery red eyes and giant spikes on her back. What she would do if you came upon her was run between your legs and split you right up down there. Yeah, so that's pretty much Glon for you. Moving on straight to number 2. There we have a female entity called Askfrun, which translates into ashwife or wife of the ash tree. She was a revered spirit, but also a very frightful one in some ways. The ash tree was seen as the most magical of trees. So it's only right, of course, that it had this magical spirit living just inside there. Because why not? The ashwife, or Askfrun, was very protective of her home, so you had to make sure that if you were relieving yourself anywhere near an ash tree, just don't, because if your wee soiled her roots, you would get sick and dearly depart pretty quickly. People would also give ash trees offerings as to appease the lady inside, and if walking around at night, give that tree a wide berth. A lady living inside of a giant tree. There we go. And moving on from that, we have number 3, and that is Gro Ro, which translates to mine guardian. Of course, mines were very, very, very important way back in the old times. So it's only natural that they would have a guardian spirit. She was a tall, grey, statuesque, scary-looking woman dressed in aristocratic finery, walking around with a little lantern. She would guard, protect the ore in the mine, and was said to be very territorial. Often the miners would bring offerings to her, sometimes a fancy dress, in hopes to bring luck and appease the lady in grey. But if you saw her in a black dress with her little lantern walking about, that meant an accident would very soon occur and everyone should evacuate as soon as possible. And moving straight on from that, we have number 4, and that is Lyktgubben, the Lantern Man. The Lantern Man was a tragic little figure. He was seen as a little small old man carrying around a little lantern. The light from the lantern was supposed to explain will-o'-the-wisps. It was said that if a man during life tried to steal another man's land by switching poles around the area, the poles were there to assert where their land and your land started or ended, and if you moved them and in that way stole land from another person, you would become a lantern man after death, doomed to just walking around with your little light. In the night, if you stumbled upon a lantern man, you had to give him money, because of course he loved money. That's why he became a lantern man. And then he would escort you home. Pretty nice of him actually, but if you didn't give him money, he would make you get lost in whatever forest you were. Sometimes to the extent that he scrambled your entire brain and you couldn't even find your home if you were standing like right next to your front door. He was a mean little machine. Then we have number 5 on our list, and that is bortbyting, which is the Swedish word for changeling. It was usually the baby of a troll or a fairy, and they would switch it out with a human child when the human mother wasn't looking, in the hopes that their baby would get baptized and live a better life. In Swedish folklore, when folklore, paganism and Christianity mixed, a lot of people started believing that the folklore creatures were doomed by God for some reason, and that they all actually wanted to come into the good graces of religion. That was a way for them to try that. These stories have tragic endings, of course. The changeling was a way to explain why some babies weren't developing normally, or why some people were different. There was this true story that I talk about in one of my older videos, a case from a few hundred years ago where the parents were so convinced that their baby was actually a changeling that they beat it and they starved it, and one morning the baby was actually found outside on a pile of dung, frozen to cancellation. Luckily, we know that because court records, and the parents were, of course, taken into the justice system at least. Just saying that your baby was a troll, it didn't fly even back then. And now to number 6 on our list, which is kyrk-rå. Some people say that the kyrk-rå and the kyrkogrim are basically the same, but they do have differences. The kyrk-rå was always a female spirit, and yes, sometimes it's said that they were created by sacrificing a woman alive on the church grounds so that she would come back as a kyrk-rå. And in some stories, they just appear every time a new church is built. They were church guardians, and that was their job, to scare away people who were behaving badly. Well, both people behaving badly and other creatures trying to get into sacred ground. A funny little story. There was this church janitor. He worked at a church that has very recently been pulled down, and they had built a new church at the spot. One night when he was walking around doing whatever they do, sweeping, looking, doing, working, yeah, the church bells started ringing out of nowhere in the middle of the night, pretty frantically. But the janitor was a smart man. He knew what was up. He took a black cat and put it under his coat and walked the stairs up to the church bells. When he got up there, he saw 2 female spirits fighting each other among the church bells. It was the old kyrk-rå and the new kyrk-rå. And of course, they were arguing over who was gonna be the guardian of this new church. They stopped their fighting as soon as they noticed the janitor standing there, and they forced him to decide who would be the kyrkro over this newly built church. After a while he thought and said that the new kyrkro that had just arrived should be the guardian of the new church. The old kyrkro was not very happy. She just got fired, she lost her job, no one would be pleased. And she turned to the janitor and told him, "Lucky for you, you have that furry little thing under your coat, or else you wouldn't be alive by now." He knew that black cats were magic. Lesson learned, always carry around a black cat with you. Yeah, this is a very good info channel. You get all this straight up into your information box up there. Take that and use it as you please. And then we have number 7 on our list, and that is Strand Vascar, which is a very hard word to translate because I think something has been lost in translation from ye olde Swedish times until now. Strand means beach, and vaskare is like to wash, or when you use those things in the gold rush and you did this and there was water and you found gold and stuff like that. Either way, it was the spirits of people who drowned and whose bodies could not be located again. They were said to roam around the beaches, and if you were around or close to the ocean and a storm was coming, you could hear their ghastly screams and cries in the wind. You should also never go close to the beach during these storms, because that's when the Strand Vascar would come and cling themselves onto you and either drag you down with them or force you to carry them to the closest graveyard, hoping for some rest. And then we have number 8, yes, and that is the Mara. The name Mara actually lives on in the Swedish language today in the word mardröm, which means nightmare. The Mara was a female spirit that would come and ride or sit upon the chest of a sleeping person, causing them nightmares, sleep paralysis, and waking up in a terrible sweat, feeling as if you haven't slept at all. I have a whole video about the Mara where I tell a few stories about her and how to get away from her. But one of the fun ways was to place hairs from a cow inside of a psalm book in your room, because the Mara hated math with a passion. She really hated counting, and for some reason she would feel forced to count the cow hairs and give up and then leave your house to find another house where she wouldn't need to count. She was either seen as a monstrous creature or, of course, a very beautiful lady, depended on the story, as usual. I'm guessing she could shapeshift. Well, she did that too in some stories. She's a shapeshifter. Scary either way. Moving on to number 9, and there we have Dgast likspöke, which is a revenant or corpse ghost. It's the ghost who is reanimated, not the spirit of a person. They were usually bigger and stronger than they were in real life and unrecognizable to their loved ones, if they had any, because it was said that it was only extremely evil, mean people who came back as a gastdraug. And they did it out of pure spite or jealousy of the ones who are still alive. There's also stories about them actually digging into graves that had treasure or coins in them and taking that into their own graves and like amassing a little treasure for themselves. They were big, swollen, blue-black corpses. Not a pretty sight at all. Either way, no good. And then we have the last one, number 10 on our list, and there we have Ming. Is the ghost of an unbaptized child that was born in shame and in secret, usually murdered by their own mother too, and then buried somewhere, hidden away and forgotten about. There were ways to keep the Myling in check. You could put something out of iron, like a scissor, on top of its little wooden coffin that I'd hope they placed it in. And yeah, but most stories, of course, the Myling comes back and it shows itself the age it would have been had it been able to live its life as a malnourished, sickly looking version though, of course. Most stories about the Myling end with it taking revenge upon its mother by breastfeeding her out of her life subscription. It's a very common theme. But yeah, I have a longer video about the Myling in case you want to hear more. It's a very fascinating creature. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that rambly little info dump from me, the morbid little hermit. So what creature did you enjoy the most? Let me know down below. I have some videos on some of them. I'll probably be doing all of them at some point in the future. So go ahead and sub and hit the bell. Either way, I've had a rough week for health reasons and anxiety and all that fun stuff. So I'm happy that I at least got to churn out one video this week. So yeah, stay morbid, stay hydrated, stay amazing, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye! Giant thanks to all my lovely patrons, and check down below for ways to support my channel. Thanks!